All right, today we have Andi Lonnen, finance business partner, and also we have Keeley Tennant, Soco Tech, Claire Marie Ligayo, and she is Lurig, Sophie Pope. And this session is being sponsored by Corcentric. And panel, love to see you. I love having you here. How's everybody doing today?
Very well, thank you, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rob. Good to see you. Good to see everyone else as well.
Hey, crew. Hey, change crew.
I love this session because I call it the Charlie's Angels session.
Does that make you Charlie?
I guess. So we'll give you a quick, you know what, I have a long bio of you guys, but I want to really get into this right now. So why don't we just chat a little bit about ourselves? Andi, tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Andi. I now run a Finance Business Partner Academy. I'm a qualified accountant for about 3 decades now, a bit scary, an experienced to commercial finance director level. So I've definitely been through a few changes.
And how about yourself, Claire Marie?
Hi, Rob. So I'm Claire Marie Boggiano, and I'm based in Manchester in the UK. My academic background is engineering, so I can sort of break things, which I like to pride myself on. And I specialize in leadership and change management. So I've had my own business for about 20 years, working with all sorts of sized companies, implementing changes to their business, which I love.
And Keeley?
Not sure she's here.
Okay, let's move over to Sophie.
Hi.
I
Yes,
noticed there was 3 Charlie's Angels. Usually there's 4
yeah.
in the new version. Sophie, how about yourself? Tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Pope, and I'm a director at Corcentric. So we are a leading provider of procurement and finance solutions. I have been in the field of change for what feels like forever, but about 21 years now, really focusing on procurement and finance change. So I've worked with massive organizations like Nike, A.T. Kearney, Amazon, and basically helping to lead huge transformations, driving costs down, changing their processes, and with a big focus on technology from my background. So I've been through quite a few changes myself in terms of personal development, but certainly worked with hundreds of companies through different change programs, from automation to AI, the lot. So yes, I'm glad to be here today talking to you and this experienced panel, I would say.
Yes, hopefully Keeley will be joining us shortly. And again, this session is sponsored by Corcentric, which Sophie, you know all about. So
yes,
as a leader, you must influence and drive change for any business to remain relevant in a competitive market. Utilizing advanced tools such as AI-driven finance applications is a change many businesses are looking to adopt. So how can you inspire teams to embrace this kind of change? During this panel discussion, leaders of change will discuss the importance and significance of inspiring change as a leader. They will discuss and share strategies for inspiring, managing, and empowering change. So let's get to it right away. So we know the culture of an organization can drive or prevent change from happening. So how can you embed and nurture a change-focused culture? Andi?
Oh, I think there's a number of ways you can do this, Rob. I think for me, collaborating with other people. I remember quite early on in my career, I was reading a book by Jack Welch. I think it was on leadership, actually, when he was at General Electric. And there was a worker who came up to him and said, "You've had my hands, you've paid for my hands for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it was, when you could have had my brain for free at the same time. And that really stuck with me. Everyone here has so much rich resource to tap into in their organizations to collaborate with and get ideas for change and nurturing change. And I think communication. I don't think you can over communicate. No one's telepathic, so people need to know what's going on in different ways, how it affects them. So that communication piece is so super important. But collaboration, I think, is key as well.
Claire Marie, we talk about culture change. It's kind of scary sometimes. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and culture in general is interesting to think about and understand. So, what is the culture of an organization? And at its simplest point, it's how we do things around here. It's not what's documented, it's what's actually happens, how we speak to each other, how we behave in meetings, how we do anything is the culture. And so if you want to drive cultural change through an organization, it's actually quite tricky because you can't do culture change. You can only really get cultural change. So you have to work out what are the things we can do that gets the cultural change that we want. And another quote to build on yours, Andi, I've heard, culture is what happens, what is tolerated, the worst behavior that leaders are prepared to tolerate is sort of the culture. So as leaders, that gives us a lot of responsibility on how we set the context and the culture of an organization. What do we tolerate? What behaviors do we encourage?
Sophie, it's always important in terms of how you respond to mistakes and challenges as a leader and as a business that sets home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even building on from what Claire Marie has said, I would say not just how leaders tolerate behavior, but the behavior that leaders set as an example is so critical because, people will respond, do they feel comfortable to admit when there's been mistakes? Do they feel that they're allowed to learn from those mistakes? How does the organization?
We lost your audio there, Sophie. We still have no audio from you.
Phone's off. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, fab. Okay. Well,
we got most of that.
They were supposed to make it better, right? But we can go with it. Yeah, I was just saying that it's not just and it's how you respond yourself. Like, do you make it comfortable for other people to admit mistakes and lead by example? People. I've had examples in teams where you've got the most collaborative, the most open, the most willing to work in a group person, and you put them under someone who's protectionist, someone who holds all the information, someone who doesn't admit mistakes themselves, and you change the culture of that entire team, and you can really lose that valuable kind of upward feedback. So yeah, it's keeping an eye out for where the fostering activity is happening and where the squashing activity is happening, for want of a better word.
Keeley, I know you're just joining us. We've been talking about culture change, but you have to acknowledge and celebrate the history of this organization or your organization.
Absolutely, you do. I think when we talk about culture and the changing of cultures, I think we have to start with being honest at where our culture is at that point. We have to acknowledge the history and the journey that we've been on. More often than not, I see organizations that are looking to change a culture without actually being honest about the position in which they start. So how do you change something that you actually don't actually know? And I think that's what happens when you get yourself into a bit of a muddle. We don't want the change process to develop into a battle, and nor should one person envision or drive that change.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's move on. Often finance leaders need to inspire change with senior business leaders first. This is kind of tricky. So what kind of approach do you suggest for inspiring change upwards? Because you got to get the big guys on board. Andi?
Right, absolutely. And I learned the hard way myself. Align with the strategic priorities of the organization. Whatever change you are doing, big, small, indifferent, it has to align with the strategic priorities. Otherwise, the more senior teams are not going to they're just not going to buy in. And I produced this amazing business case, a proposal, and ways to take the organization forwards and everything else. My boss said that's the most well-written business case I've ever seen, Andi, but it doesn't address the strategic goals of the business. So I was glad to really learn that lesson, and I hope that helps other people as well. The top team are never going to buy in unless it helps them achieve the strategic goals and priorities of the organization, to me anyway.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, does anybody else want to chime in there? Why don't we have?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll jump in if that's okay, Rob. I think storytelling forms a big part of how we try and influence change. Just jumping in there with another quote, and it says, "Our species think in metaphors and learn through stories," and I love that. And I think that if you can understand deeply and describe simply what you're trying to change, whilst combining that with using informative power, informal power, what are your influencing tactics that you're trying to use? We know that if we're trying to influence upwards, then data and the story that we use to try and influence that change becomes really important.
Yeah, and I think you really touched on the important part there. When you're getting your team to come along with you, storytelling is so important, and you want them to want to be involved, and kind of getting them on board is critical to painting the picture of where we're going. And I think, like Andi, I've learned the hard way that actually when you're managing up, they don't really care about the story so much as, what is the end goal?
Yeah.
What return on investment are we going to have? And like you say, does it fit with the strategic imperatives? And also, can this make me look good, to a certain extent? Like when I'm in my board meeting and I've got 4 minutes to explain to the board, my imperatives, are you giving me something that I can use that's going to be valuable, or seen as valuable? So yeah, it's definitely quite disheartening when you build this case and you talk about the how wonderful it would be and how everyone would feel great about it, and then they're just like, okay, give me the give me the shorthand.
And one learning I would add on top of that is don't surprise them in the boardroom. There's work to do beforehand, and that's one-on-one, and it does take time, but actually it helps you. So they shouldn't be hearing this for the first time in the boardroom. And if you can, when you've done your work and you're thinking, and ideally involving them, again, back to collaboration in advance, and then speaking to them in their language. So if you're speaking to the marketing director, or if you're speaking to the finance director, speaking to the operations director, speak to them in their language so they can understand, that's how this helps me get what I deliver what I need to deliver. That takes quite a lot of energy and time beforehand, but it's always well invested,
because they all ultimately want to know what's in it for me, don't they? Is that the famous whiffing comes up again?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I find this topic very interesting. Does anybody have a hands-on experience when this change with the, different people came about, and how you handled that?
I can take this. I'm sure we've all got plenty of examples. I've been through so many changes, whether it's office moves, IT system implementations, all that sort of thing. So to choose, I think we had one office move that went so spectacularly badly, because to Claire's point, it was sprung on everybody. And it was a complete move from being in the countryside and parkland and car parking to a city centre location. And people were thinking, what am I going to do with my kids? And how am I going to manage this? And how much more is it going to cost? And will we be able to park the car? And, you know, all these things going through people, very legitimate things going through people's minds. So there was a lot went wrong with that one. So when in a different company, we were talking about an office move, I said, oh, I've seen this go very wrong. I've got a few suggestions to make. One of which was to pull together like a committee of team members. So someone who would represent their teams, not managers, but team members, people who had that, you know, they had that trust factor, and they would meet the team who were implementing the change. They would bring the concerns of the team, they would bring ideas from the team, solutions, suggestions, different places to move office, and that sort of thing. And it just became so fantastic. There were posters everywhere. People really got into it. People got creative. People got on board with it. They were excited for it. It was getting frustrating that we weren't moving any quicker. So it couldn't have been a more different experience. So I think I learned more from what didn't go well, to implement what could go better. And it was that collaboration piece really, and communication again. I'll probably keep saying those throughout. But it worked.
Wonderful. You know, we're regularly hearing more about AI and the impacts it will have on finance. How do you suggest we approach the subject of using AI with finance teams? Sophie, why don't you address this one?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a really hot topic at the moment, and one that's very close to my heart, as we've actually been through the first waves of AI implementation in finance tech. And, you know, I'm sure we could all kind of list the steps that you need to take. A lot of them are similar. You know, so when you're identifying the opportunity, you got to make sure that, you know, is it something I really need? And is that going to really add value to the business, align with what we've said before? You know, build a clear strategy that you can communicate, you know, with the team, but take you know, an extra care to think about things like planning for data and planning for preparing people. Now, the AI is going to be different because the strategic insights that it gives are slightly different to different projects that you may well have done. And really, you know, when it comes to people, there is a clear educational piece that's needed. There's a clear getting the right people on the team piece that's needed. You know, you need to pick people who are open, not just to the technology, but to slightly broader ways of thinking than your normal process. This is the way it's always been done. And that is going to be really critical. For the other reason that AI is slightly different actually is you need to never underestimate the amount of time that you need to drive continuous improvement with this kind of program. So AI is self-learning. It can be user-driven learning now. We're doing generative AI, so that means we're actually generating content from the algorithms, which is massively powerful. But don't underestimate the fact that you need your best people on that project to feed the algorithms, to feed the data. So the training that goes into the system can continuously improve. And, you know, there's a lot of similarities with projects that, you know, many people have done before, and it's not something to be afraid of, but just don't underestimate the time that you would need to really fine tune, you know, the outputs, and don't really limit yourself in terms of what you think is going to be, well, I'd say be realistic about what is going to come out of the other end. So, you know, it's a very exciting time. And I think the difference is really that, you know, the technology that we're implementing now is going to generate, you know, massive, I guess, competitive advantage really to those companies who don't pick them up. And while we're talking about change, you know, it's the people who, or it's the organizations who embrace it sooner are going to see massive head starts when it comes to implementing this kind of technology. So yeah, it's a very exciting industry to be in at the moment. There's a lot of potential for the finance world, and I think that, you know, let's take our learnings from all the change projects we've done, and to you really see how we can apply them, you know, to this new kind of wave of technology. So
Yeah.
Keeley, let me ask you this real quick. There's so many AI tools out there. How do you make a decision?
Oh gosh, so
you just pick us, obviously.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, of course. It's so funny, Sophie, because we've been when I was leading the finance teams, we went through a huge digital transformation project, and it's really interesting looking back now when we think about whether change has gone right or wrong. Now, AI is evolving daily, and I think one of the lessons that I learned with AI is make sure you are clear on the problem that you are trying to solve before you go out there and invest in the tool, because AI is moving on so quickly. If everyone gets excited about it, but if you don't think about what problem you need to solve in your business, you may end up applying and going through all of this change process, and your application may not be fit for purpose. So within my old teams, we implemented sales, purchase, invoice recognition software, and it looked great. Everyone was excited. But actually, that AI technology has moved on in the last 18 months. Now, had we have waited just a little bit longer, we could have version 2.0. But I think in some instances, you can move too soon. So I think you have to make sure that you are clear on the problem that you are trying to solve, and go out to market and see if that shiny AI tool is fit for your business. Because the AI tools are out there, but it has to be right for your business.
Square and a square, round peg and a round peg.
Yeah, and ultimately, when we're looking at AI, you know, bad data out, bad data in. So AI, generative AI, is learning from the information that you give it. So if the data that you're extracting is poor or it's bad, then what goes into the AI tool and the algorithms and the generative AI will be bad too. People seem to think that AI is going to solve the world, and yes, I think it will add competitive advantage, absolutely, but only if we use it in the right way.
Ladies, empowering teams to see where change is possible and drive that change is key. What strategies do you use to empower your team to drive change? I'm going to start with Andi this time.
Sure. Well, I'm a big fan of celebrating. Celebrating wins, every little win, finding everything to celebrate, and just keeping that momentum going, and also course correcting throughout as well. I just think that's really important. Is whether it's tech or whatever, it's find the bugs, almost turn it into a game. The aim of the game is to find the bugs, find the things that are the problem, call them out, and then course correct, and, you know, keep celebrating what we're finding, you know, celebrating what we're winning, and so on as well. Just keep everyone's spirits up, keep the momentum going.
Sophie, it's great to celebrate, but you also have to manage expectations, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. And you know, I think we would all attest to the fact that when you start a project, you know, as a leader, especially someone who's been through this God knows how many times, you know that there's going to be a massive dip in morale, and, you know, you're expecting that, but people who, you know, haven't been through this kind of change before may not, and it may blindside them, or, you know, really kind of get them down. And it's about preparing them and guiding them through that process to say, okay, this is totally normal. You know, it's not going to be forever. This is how we get out of it. You know, and encouraging that kind of, I'm a big believer in you know, empathy when it comes to, you know, fostering culture. I was gonna draw a comparison to the fact that I'm a toddler mum. So, you know, like sometimes she just needs to be heard. And then once she knows I've heard her, then sometimes that, you know, sometimes the issue can go away. And I think actually it is similar with adults. Sometimes you do need to give people the space to to air their grievances and to, you know, feel heard. And, you know, it's not necessarily about having a big pity party, but if you try and ignore that those feelings exist, then you just lose that connection with people, and they don't believe in what you're doing. They don't feel like their opinion is important. So yeah, I think empathy and helping expectation setting is two quite big values that you can bring as a leader.
And
So guys, we get
sorry,
go ahead real quick.
Just real quick, Sophie. I think we've just to add to that is when we're looking at change, we have to remember as change leaders, we're already aware of the change. Our people aren't. So to your point, Sophie, having empathy, I think, is so critical in the change process.
So ladies, we have 2 minutes left for this last question. As change leaders, how do you stay motivated to drive change, and what advice would you give to aspiring leaders? Let's start off with Andi.
Sure. I think knowing why you're doing it and staying focused on that, because like everyone's saying, in these inevitable dips, it's come back to why you're doing it and why it's going to make things better and why it's for the greater good, and so on, to just help you stay focused as a leader.
Claire Marie?
Yeah, I would add to that, you know,
sorry, I'm not going to go Keeley. I got the wrong name. Go ahead.
Yeah, so to really be gentle with yourself and to pace yourself. You know, this is like a roller coaster, and it's going to go up and it's going to go down and come back round. And remember that you're also on the change journey, so you're also going to have an emotional response. And really simple things like, you know, to help build your personal resilience as well as your people's resilience, you know, getting a good night's sleep and having a walk or a run or eating chocolate if that's your thing or whatever it is. But, you know, really, you know, minding yourself in the process and just recognizing you will be on a change curve, you will be going up and down, it's all normal, and get a good night's sleep.
Keeley?
I would say change together. You know, change doing it on your own can be very lonely. You know, change with others around you. And as Claire Marie says, we'll go on this emotional cycle of change and hopefully won't get caught in the valley of despair.
How about you, Sophie?
Yeah, I think I think you've all summarized it very well. I think for me, it's almost like, you know, this is like a rite of passage, you know, when you're on your career journey, and albeit sometimes these challenges are so hard and you think, oh my God, and then, you know, if you look sort of a couple of years in the future and you think, actually, you know, they're a massive tick on your experience, you know, on the wealth of what you can offer for an organization. And I know that sounds kind of quite selfish, but it's almost like, think about your development, really. And yes, it's hard, but yes, you're going to get something out of it. And if you can turn around and say, I've done, you know, huge projects or huge change, then, you know, you are gaining as well, aren't you?
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Before we leave, let me ask you one quick question, because we're talking about change. How can a leopard change his spots? Well, by going from one spot to another. This session was sponsored by Corcentric. We are going to keep Claire Marie around for a quick chat real quick. And again, ladies, thank you, Andi, Keeley.
Thank you.
Sophie, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.